that long, but it is in terms of the papers that have been provided. But first of all, in view of the fact that today is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz and Birkenau death camps in Poland, where we've actually been, it's quite a harrowing place to visit. Can I propose that we have a minute's silence just to remember those who died and their families today, and the survivors who've attended the events that, on the site, well, certainly at Birkenau today. Okay, members. Right, we'll start with agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Angela?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Murphy, substitute Councillor G. Apologies, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. Right, thank you. So, public participation, item 2, well, we have had a statement from, as you've all seen in front of you, from Linda Neal, the Chair of Birchover Parish Council, regarding item 5, review of the provision of public toilets. It's quite a long statement, so I don't propose to read it all out, but obviously it's quite detailed in terms of the provision for toilets in Birchover, which obviously the Parish Council feel quite strongly about. So Ash has advised that they'll give a written response to Councillor Neal, and hopefully she'll be satisfied with that, and the Parish Council likewise, or otherwise they'll probably come back to us with further comments. So we'll leave that one for now. Right, and then we go on to the next item, interest. Has anyone got any interest they'd like to declare? No? Right, okay. So item 4 then, car park reviews, phase 1, review of charges. It's pages 3 to 156. This is the main report, obviously, for this evening's meeting. So can I ask Ash to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm going to open the report, but then I'll hand over to Vicky, who's done the majority of work on this, the review. For those members who have been involved in the working group, and hopefully for those of you who've been through this report, you'll see that a lot of time and effort has gone into this, including modelling and remodelling of the payment structure. And it's a review that started in 2022, where the scope was agreed in July of that year at GNR. I'd just like to thank all the members that were involved in the working group. There have been some really meaningful discussions and been some good contributions, and also thank those members of the business community as well as residents that also helped in responding to the consultation that took place. But I am going to hand over to Vicky to go through the detail, and we'll take questions after that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash. Thank you, Chair. So as we pointed out, the Chair's pointed out today, there's 100 and odd pages in terms of all of the information that's on there. But generally, the main bulk of the report for tonight is to go through the responses to the consultation, which took place in summer last year. And then there's some recommendations for the committee to consider, which are relating to our charging car parks already. The free car parks at the point of use will be discussed at a later date, and future reports will be presented to this committee in due course if necessary. So the main point of the review initially was to look. We've got a one-size-fits-all at the moment, and we felt, or members felt in the member working group, that doesn't really work for everybody. And they wanted us to take into consideration all of the car parks, all of the ways that they were used, the users of those car parks, what the capacity was like, whether they were underused, whether they were overused, the groups that tend to use those car parks. And we went into a lot of detail, and all that information was in the report that was presented to GNR in March of last year. Within that report as well, there were some recommendations of potential charges, and as a result of that meeting, we did go out to consultation. So I'll just give you some overview or some headlines of the responses that we received as part of the consultation. So we had 1931 responses in total, and of those, 1,692 were residents. Of those residents, 637 were from Ashbourne, so it was quite a big response from that. And in terms of the questions that are relating to the report tonight, the first sort of question was about supporting the idea of categorising the car parks and having different charging structures. We had a 70% response from residents that were supported that principle, with 23 that didn't, 23% that was. With regards to sort of seasonal charges, specifically relating to Matlock Bath, we had 61% who supported that and 33 that didn't support that. And with the 30 minutes free, we had an overwhelming of 92% that supported that, with just less than 1% that didn't. So in terms of those, our priority was looking at residents, not necessarily over visitors, but making sure that we were having some charges that would be preferential to them as well. What was a little bit disappointing was the lack of responses we got from businesses. But in other work we've done with businesses, the response has been quite low. So I'm not really sure how we're going to change that. But we did email all the businesses within the district through the economic development team. So everyone got the email about the survey. So we only actually had 46 respondents to that, which is a bit disappointing. Now, in terms of, we had some responses from the local parishes, mainly to do with the free car parks, but there were some in there in Appendix 9 which were to do with the charging car parks. One particularly from Overhaddon, which has been taken into consideration, and we have got some proposals to make some changes to that charging structure. And generally, with the responses, they were in line with the proposals, which we did present to the report in March of last year. Now, in terms of the recommendation in Appendix 4, we appreciate we're making some significant changes, and although it might sort of seem in the financial area of the report that we could, if the same number of people parked in the car park for the same duration, make an increase of £200,000, I'm not anticipating that in any way, because we are making some changes to the way the car parks will operate and people will use the car parks, and we are bringing in a free period of parking, which obviously will have an impact. And then, in addition to that, we do have, obviously, the Ashbourne Reborn project, which is underway at the moment and due to complete at the end of this calendar year. So there are certain car parks that may not be available as we had hoped. But in terms of all of the income for the marketplace that would be removed, we've profiled that along with other car parks within Ashbourne to take in some of that displacement, which is a general displacement for that. And then we've made some recommendations to do with Ashbourne on the completion of the project, just to show some commitment to the town and businesses there, that we have listened to what they've said about the 4-hour waiting restriction in Shawcroft, and we intend to remove that once the Ashbourne Reborn project is completed. And also the swimming pool we had in the member working group looked to apply a flat rate to that car park. But what we had some concerns about is if we put that flat rate of £2 within before the Ashbourne Reborn project had been completed, then the car park might not serve the leisure centre as well as it could do, because you'd have people who won't be going to the leisure centre parking there for that time. So that was just the commitment to say that we would be looking at implementing a flat rate there. So in terms of the changes, apologies. Officers are pretty confident in terms of the impact on income, which we anticipate should be not negatively impacted. However, obviously the Ashbourne Reborn project could and may have some influence over that, so members just need to bear that in mind when making any sort of decisions on the recommendations tonight. We also looked at the permits what we offer. So we do a discount season ticket, and of the local workers that did respond to the consultation, we were quite surprised actually only 28% of the people there actually knew we did a discount season ticket. So that's something we need to take on board and advertise a little bit more, so that they are aware of that. And with the discount season ticket, taking into consideration that a lot of people that work in the Dales may be in the hospitality industry and maybe on a reduced income, and with the addition of the £2 flat rate in some of the car parks across the district, we felt it would be appropriate to reduce that from the £555 down to £480. And the member working group were in agreement with that. In terms of all the other resident and reserve day payments, they were all considered at the time, and members wanted to retain or freeze the prices for this year. And then sort of bringing it closing really and opening up for questions, one of the recommendation is about including the charges for the car parks in the fees and charges process, because it's quite a lengthy project. As you can imagine, it's taken nearly 2.5 years to get it to this point, and it doesn't provide a lot of flexibility if we need to make some changes quite quickly. So it's not necessarily that we'd be looking to increase the charging every year, but that gives that flexibility, and if something was to change, we would be able to react to that a little bit more quickly than we can currently. So I think I'll leave it to the floor really and for questions if anybody has any.
Would you prefer us to deal with the whole report for questions, or divide it up into different sections in terms of your paperwork and anything you want to quote?
It's up to you, Chair, how you want to handle it, whether you want to do each recommendation at once, if that is easier, or whether you want to do it all together. It's entirely up to you.
We'll perhaps deal with it bit by bit then. Obviously, recommendation 2 is permit scheme, so we can deal with all that together. That's A to E, so that's quite a few items. We'll deal with recommendation 1 first, and amendments to the Derbyshire Dales off-street parking places order 2013 as outlined in Appendix 4. That's the one that's side on. A landscape table, that be approved and published for a period of statutory consultation and to commence 1st of April 2025. Any questions on that to start with? No?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, with the particularly the Matlock Bath one, are you confident that that's going to have a positive impact on Matlock Bath? I'm just a bit, about the businesses, with putting it up. How much research did you go into with that? Did you?
Well, I think what we looked at was the car parks are at over capacity during the summer months. So these are generally visitors. Anyone who's a resident locally would never dream of going to Matlock on a sunny day, because they know it's going to be quite challenging to get parts there. So I think it was more the fact that the transactions and the I suppose the need provides that information, and looking at other areas that have a similar sort of tourist attraction. That's not unusual to have a seasonal charge in those areas, and for it to be more expensive in the seasonal months or the peak months, and then a reduced rate in the off-peak. So we kind of looked at that sort of research, as well as demand really for space.
No more questions, and sorry, Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. Whether it's relevant to this part of the thing or not, what was the response from Ashbourne Town team?
We didn't get a direct response from Ashbourne Town team in the consultation.
Right. And my other question is, it seems to have been going on forever, this car park review, and on the initial stages we talked about like the leisure centre, membership of the leisure centre being part of the car park pass. Did that go by the wayside in the end?
No, we did look at how we could try and provide some sort of discount or a parking as part of the those people that have got a subscription, and we are still working with them on how we can apply that. But at the moment, it's it won't be looked at this year. But if the flat rate goes in, which is anticipated, then it'll make it a little bit easier for us to administer it.
Thank you.
I think what we'll do is go through the questions first, and then we'll deal with, because obviously people are going to, there's overlap between points that people are going to make, so we can deal with the actual debate fairly generally. Then we can go through the recommendations one by one to vote. But so we deal with them with questions for the permit schemes, item 2, that's 2A to E. Any questions on those? Councillor Nash, sorry.
Hi, Vicky. You said that you're going to publicise these more because they're not very well known. I think that's a good thing to do, but it is a substantial discount if we have a vast number of people migrating from daily parking. Have we done any modelling to what impact that will have on the income stream?
We will monitor it carefully, and we'll probably have a cap on the number of permits that we would issue across the board in terms of the number of spaces available. So I think it'd be a bit of a watch and wait and see what happened. But we have got that in mind in terms of it might exceed capacity. So we'll just be a watching brief on that, but we might have to put some caps on how many we sell.
It would be useful to see the caps put in up front and then reviewed once we reach them, whether we want to extend them or not.
Well, we can look at that before they go in if that's recommended.
Thanks.
A 30-minute free period, 1 hour free for disabled drivers or blue badge holders in town centre car parks from the 1st of April. And that's also on Appendix 4, the landscape sheet. So any questions on that? That's a slightly different, I suppose you could say revolutionary change really, I suppose. It's something that happens in other parts of the country, but hasn't been done here before. So, yes, Councillor G.
Could I just, probably I've missed something, you know, with this 30 minutes free,
Yeah.
is there a leeway on top of that? You know, if somebody's 30 minutes, do they get an extra 10 minutes as well?
Not as a standard. On street that normally happens. You get a 10-minute sort of leeway, but not necessarily in a car park.
On some car parks, there was some sort of government regulation or whatever that you can't give a ticket until 10 minutes after the.
Yeah, I mean we can look at that if you wanted to apply that. I'm just in general terms we're saying.
Well,
30
I just want
minutes.
to make sure that the public understand the rules, because some people are clever on it and some people aren't, are they?
Well, we can make sure the signage is really clear on that as well.
So 30 minutes could be 40 minutes. Excellent.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't necessarily want to publicise it too much, because then people will try and go for 40 minutes and then they might overstay and not get back in time. So it is 30 minutes, and there is like a minimum grace period that is permitted, which is in place, on street and off street. So that
And what's the minimum grace
10
period?
minutes.
So it is 10
Yeah, it
minutes
is 10
over
minutes.
the 30 minutes, yeah.
And we don't want it to operate like the notorious car park in Derby, do we? Right. Oh, yes, Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question about how the 30-minute free period will interact with the residence permit. So if you've already got a residence permit where you've got your free parking at the start and end of the day, so does that 30 minutes potentially sort of get added on as well to the permit or not?
No, it would. The intention would be that it's a standalone 30 minutes. Otherwise, people will be putting a ticket in and then an hour ticket and want it to run on. It is basically just to nip in and do those items. If people want to use their pass throughout before 11 and after 3, they can use it then, but it's not in addition to.
Councillor Bull and then Councillor Slack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The 30 minutes, how are we going to do it? Is it a case that they have to get a ticket for that 30 minutes? Is it going to be registration numbers put in it? And how is it going to be actually enforced?
Yeah, so
Please.
that's okay. So basically, you need to go to the machine and take a ticket out. Unfortunately, we are working with pay by phone to look at an alternative to allow the pay by phone option as well. But at the moment, it is just to go to the machine and get the ticket and put it in your vehicle. That is your first, what you would call a first set of observation for the enforcement officer. So they know when you've arrived and when your expiration time is. And the enforcement officer then will monitor it if that's the case. And if anyone overstays 30 minutes plus the 10, then they could be issued with a ticket.
Saying that as regards the enforcement officer, does that mean we'll have an enforcement officer sat in the car park all day?
No, the enforcement, the enforcement we will change the enforcement to be more prominent in certain locations, but no, we won't have an enforcement officer sat there all day.
Right. And the 30 minutes, sorry, Chair, may I? The 30 minutes, are these for all spaces within these particular car parks that are going to be designated, or is it going to only be a few spaces?
No, the intention is for it to be all spaces, and obviously an additional 30 minutes for those blue badge holders that park in the blue badge.
Thank you.
Or even if they've got a blue badge and they're in a normal space, they'll still get an hour as well.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've had a late representation, which you've seen from Baslow Parish Council in relation to the 30 minutes free. Obviously, the car park, I came late to the car park review team, so I've only just sort of joined it. I know there will be a phase 2. Will it be possible to look at people that have made sort of representations, those on the ground, the parish and town councils, that obviously weren't consulted originally?
Yeah, definitely. There will be, we will carry out the second phase of the consultation. When it goes in, we will review it after a year and see, how successful it's been and whether we need to make any changes and obviously implement those ones that we've already said. So there'll be a further opportunity.
That's helpful, thank you.
Of course, Baslow car park's one of those where the charge includes the toilet charge, isn't it?
It does.
Right, and Councillor Slack now, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Wordsworth Marketplace car park is an ideal car park for people to slip in and go across to the chemist. But unfortunately, you go on the car park and it's always full. You have to wait to get a place. You can wait sometimes 20 minutes to get a place. So we don't really get charged. Will there be cameras there, by the way? That's another question.
What type of cameras, sorry?
To look at, survey what's going on the marketplace, on the car park.
There's no intention to put any new CCTV in any of the car parks. There is a CCTV camera that's located near Whitworth, near the red light line that looks over that way, that sees it, but it won't be monitoring the car park. Sort of interactions, it's just purely for CCTV.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to wait. So when it was suggested that special parking areas could be made for short stay to the 30 minutes, is that possible? Or?
It can be possible. The other thing is, obviously, it leaves it free or unable to be used if they want to park for longer. So it might be one of those things where we might want to put it in as it is and see what the uptake is and what the feedback is, and maybe make some changes later on. Or
because I can see a big turnover with people coming in, going out, And we don't want a lot of cars on the car park, blocking the car park, do we?
No.
No, so it would be an advantage if we had a couple of bays mainly for short stay.
We can look at that within the proposal, so that's fine if you want us to consider that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, members. Any further questions on that? Right. We'll go on to recommendation 4 then, to approve the introduction of limited waiting parking spaces for 30 minutes in the 7 parking spaces, including 1 disabled parking space which will be retained in the marketplace at Ashbourne on the completion of the Ashbourne Reborn project. So any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Does this mean to say that all the parking spaces, because I believe there only are 7 parking spaces anyway going to be there, these are just literally a stopover of 30 minutes? They're not paying for a ticket. Will they have to purchase a ticket? Or shall we say, do they have to get a ticket to prove the free time of being there, or what? Is it free or?
Yes, the reason we've put it in this report is we don't want to put a ticket machine in place for 7 spaces. So what we've done is it's called a limited waiting. So the officer would have to carry out that first set of observation rather than the ticket doing that work for them, and then would come back and obviously then do their second set of observation. So they'd probably look at the marketplace first, go to another car park and come back afterwards to check them.
Any? Yes, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused on this one, actually. So the resident concession permit, so you can't put that in your window at all, whether you're there for 3 minutes or 30 minutes then?
I think what we're trying to explain in this is that you can't use the concession permit after 3 and before 11. So you can't park there overnight and take up those spaces which are basically being left for the businesses there, so people could pop in and get their fish and chips.
Yeah. So whatever permit pass, whatever you've got, 30 minutes is the limit, and off you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
No more questions? Next one is recommendation 5 to approve the Recommendation 5 to approve the 4-hour paid maximum period in Shorecroft car park be lifted to allow all-day parking from the 1st of April 2026. Nope. Right. Recommendation 6 then, to approve that the Leisure Centre swimming pool Ashbourne car park changes from being categorised as current to a flat rate car park from the 1st of April 26 again. Nope. Right. Okay. Very straightforward so far. The last one then is the car park charges, including the fees and charges consideration process. That's from 2026-27 financial year. That's April 26, I suppose. Members each year can decide on whether to increase or decrease car parking charges without having to wait to conduct a full review. So does anyone want to ask anything about that? Yes, Councillor Archer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think this is really important because we're making really big, significant, I think, hopefully really positive changes here. But because they're such big changes, it is going to be difficult to predict, despite that a lot of time going into the modelling that people have done, which has been excellent as part of the group. The sort of quality of the modelling work that's been done has been really, really good to try and illustrate what will happen. But we don't really know. I mean, it's a bit of a suck it and see situation, isn't it? So can you a little bit more detail in terms of how you envisage that review happening, in terms of the balance between what officers will be doing, what input members would have, and how do you sort of see that happening after a year or whatever it might be?
Well, the next sort of the round of fees and charges would normally start in sort of October this year. So we should have a good idea of how it's performed in the summer months anyway. So I'm more than happy to have that conversation with the member working group in advance of any sort of suggestions, or to go through any of the outcome of what's actually happened on the ground, and then we can discuss it from there. But normally what would happen is officers would make a recommendation, put some comments in, and then that would go to members for review and as to whether they wanted to accept that or not as a part of that process. But I think it goes to GNR if I remember rightly. But I'm, like I say, more than happy to have a meeting with a member working group and we can discuss those and collaborate on those a little bit.
Thank you. Councillor Lees.
Nothing to ask, Chair. Councillor Archer's just asked that one which group it was going to go to.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hobson.
With regards to Ashbourne Leisure Centre, what about the people using the swimming pool at Bakewell? How does it work for them?
So when we made the changes to the free after 3 and before 11, that actually addressed some of the concerns in Bakewell, because most of their swimming lessons would start at 4 o'clock. So now, as far as we're aware, there are no issues within Bakewell in terms of using the leisure centre, because the resident permit and the extension of that additional hours sort of addressed the concerns they had at the time.
But is that not just the same at Ashbourne?
I don't think it is. I think they've got different, because it's predominantly a swimming pool at Bakewell, whereas in Ashbourne it is completely different. They've got loads of different sessions all day, so I think it is different. We haven't had any response from Freedom in regards to Bakewell specifically, but they did respond with regards to Ashbourne. So I'm assuming they've taken that on board and provided that to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. No further questions? Right, we'll go back to the recommendations then. Would someone like to propose the recommendation for number 1? Is that?
I was going to suggest, Chair, for simplicity, we take them all together.
Can do, yeah.
Because I think if we pair them apart, the intention of the package might be lost. So I would like to propose all 7. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah, you can do that, definitely.
Okay,
yes.
I would, and might say 1 or 2 words.
Right, very good.
In that respect. I think that everybody around this table, and possibly listening, will agree that a review has been long overdue. It's been flagged from several years ago, and clearly the pattern of use of our car parks is pretty inefficient. I can wander a quarter of a mile in Ashbourne, one can be empty, another one completely full. That doesn't make a great deal of sense and must be affecting the bottom line if that's the only thing one was considering. Clearly it isn't. We have to consider what our residents want and indeed what our visitors need. And it's that balance that I think has actually been worked out incredibly well by Vicky and the working group in putting this together. It's taken a long time, but this actually is large, it's complex. Some might find it confusing at first sight, but it does make perfect sense. And I think that's shown by the response to the consultation. I mean, I think except in the one case where people are talking about charges increasing. People are in favour of what's happening, and who actually would on a survey say, I'm in favour of the charges going up? Obviously, what do we expect? So I think it's an excellent package. I much commend it and thank Vicky for her presentation and the work of the working group. Thank you, Chair.
Second, Councillor Archer.
Yeah, I'd like to second it. I'd like to sort of support a lot of what Councillor Dobbs said. I've been on this working group since day one. It does feel like a long journey, but the reason it's been a long journey is because the officers and the working group didn't take the easy route. An easy route would have just been to sort of, oh, this is what we've got, let's put everything up a bit because of inflation. And actually, they took into account what a lot of us members in the working group were saying, feedback from our communities, and had a much more nuanced look at the car parking situation across our towns and different areas. And a huge amount of work went into it. The modelling was fantastic in terms of the sort of interactive things we got as working member groups to see the impact of different changes and how that would pan out. And that allowed us to make some really good contributions and hopefully, I think, come up with what is a really, really good, balanced, focused and effective report. I think what we're aiming to do really, we knew we couldn't reduce income stream and we have to accept that and be honest with the public. The income stream is important to this council. So that is important to be honest and open about that. But we also wanted to make sure we made it easier for people to visit our town centres, residents going to the town centre, help town centre businesses. And I think there's lots of elements of this report that do that, while not putting off visitors from outside, which again I think we've done and got that balance right between residents and visitors and peak times and seasonal times. And so on. You've also got to bear in mind this goes along with the extension of the residence permit that we've had as well recently. I think all these things actually make a much better package for residents and visitors coming to the Derbyshire Dales. I would absolutely just like to add, do agree about the leisure centre in Ashbourne. It would be great if we could try and get something in there in the future after Reborn's finished in terms of a freedom leisure package there, because that would help encourage people to use the leisure centre. I mean, we will obviously need to review it in lots of detail when we've seen what actually happens. But in terms of what's in this report, just want to say really big thank you to Ash and Vicky and the team of officers and all the other members of the working group. I actually really enjoyed working on this. And it's great to see it come out what I think is a really positive outcome. So, yeah, 100% happy to second this. Thank you.
Any further contributions to debate? Yes, Councillor Lees and Councillor Hobson, after that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to echo them comments. It's been brilliant. It's been a long slog. I was on the first working group, and I think it was Vicky and Robert that convinced me to go on to pay by phone. And I thought, never. Best thing since sliced bread now. Love it. So thank you.
And then Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I accept lots of hard work's gone into this report over the years. The fact does remain, though, we made a substantial surplus in car parking fees, and it's important for our income stream, but we do have to bear in mind our visitors and our businesses. We've got empty shops, just to bear that in mind, which brings me to, I think I was a sub at the last governance and resources meeting where they were talking about fees and charges, and the members around the table, because I was subbing, not the, and they come with the fees and charges, and members are wanting for next year a lot more documentary evidence as to why fees should change. They don't just want to say, well, we think we'll do this. They actually want to see, and I think we owe that to our public to do that. Just one more comment as well about the consultation process. I do actually think it's hard for, businesses, they're trying to earn a living, they're trying to do this, perhaps, they don't always, not always the first thing that they think about is doing a consultation and whether they'll be taken any notice of. But I'm pleased that, we will be talking again to Basel and other places, and it's not just set in stone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I agree. If you do carry out consultation, you've got to make sure you take some note of what people are saying. In fact, the three members opposite me, in fact, now, in order, Councillor Slack, Councillor Nash, and then Councillor G.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the mover and seconder. I think it's been I've been on it since the very beginning, and it's been interesting to see the different views come forward, and the consultations are tremendous success with all the people putting their views forward. I do think we need car parking Derbyshire Dales is a great chunk of our expenditure comes from car parking. We must realise this. If we hadn't got the car parking, we'd have to put the council tax up enormously or cut services back. So we do need car parking, but we've got to get that balance right so we don't destroy it. And I think we've done it here. Yeah, I think it's, from all accounts, you know, my residents have no really serious issues with the alterations in charging. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Nash.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the report and don't want to change anything. There's been a lot of hard work and it's got to a good place. But I'm thinking about looking forward, and we've got 2 more phases of this report to come. And at this point, I think it would be good for us to go back and recheck what we're trying to achieve in the next 2 phases. One of the things this council does declare a climate emergency, I believe. And how does encouraging more people to use cars and less public transport tie in with that? So I welcome Councillor Hobson's suggestion that we have more data, but I think we need to look at it in a more rounded economical and environmental sense rather than just car parking in isolation, which is largely what seems to have been done now.
Councillor G.
Yeah. From what I've seen of this, I think officers have done a fabulous job from the remit they were given. I'd like to thank Ash and his team because it does look completely sensible. Just one little health warning on it. Right at the beginning, it was mentioned that they were a bit disappointed about the lack of businesses that had responded to the consultation. I think, did you mention the number 46? Well, I don't think 46 businesses is necessarily a small number, because it could be that some of those are adversely affected and are adversely affected by their position in relation to car parks. So we just need to be a little bit careful. Is it that certain businesses are impacted? So that 46 could be quite important. So we need to look at those with a little bit of a microscope and just make sure we're not punishing somebody. And some businesses might have their own parking and it doesn't affect them at all, but some are rarely affected by this. So that's just all I wanted to say. But besides that, I think you've done a fabulous job. Thank you.
Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I'd like to echo everything that my fellow members have stated. The one thing, as regards the consultation, I'm quite pleased, just for once, that Ashbourne did take note and did do some response on the consultation, because a lot of times, as Gareth has just mentioned, you know, these consultations go out and it's a case of, yeah, okay, fine, we don't take any notice. I think, obviously, it's been a long time coming. Unfortunately, Ashbourne has, well, no, I shouldn't say unfortunately, we should say fortunately, in the sense that they've got the money and now we've got all this big change in Ashbourne. That's the biggest issue that we've got now. So I can understand that. And I think it will be difficult at the time for this to, you know, look and show what it is doing. But hopefully, once, you know, we've got the nice roads and the nice pedestrianised areas and the likes, it might just encourage people to come and stop and visit the shops that hopefully want to come to Ashbourne now to be open and do. So, but the other thing I'd like to just mention, we've done all this and great work. There's going to be a lot of change, and I do think a lot of these car parks really do need a lot of signage to where they actually are. How we would do it in the towns that it affects, I'm not quite so sure, but I think that is a big situation because, you know, obviously we've got cattle market and the likes, which are there, which are charged now, and Norfolk people just don't know where that is. So it's signage, I do believe, that we really have to make when we're doing all this changing, and not just the signs to say it's going to cost X for an hour or the likes. That's the directional as regards where these car parks are. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Councillor. In fact, I was thinking about that when I was reading what the recommendations were for Darley Dale, for the car park at the Whitworth Centre. And I assume that the signage there is going to include quite, signage off the road, because otherwise it will be, the car park there is very restricted, but I think it's important that with all the other schemes as well, to make sure that people who are driving through, people who are strangers, can see where the toilets, even if they're internal car park shared with a business, where exactly they are. Councillor Linthwaite and then Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. It was just an observation regarding the annual parking ticket for businesses. Previously, as a business owner in Matlock, I bought the annual ticket. And every year when the renewal came through, I thought, oh my giddy aunt, because it's a lot of money to pay out in one go. And it was going up year after year after year. But even at its most expensive, before I retired, I still worked it out. It was still saving me hundreds of pounds a year. Because if you're here all day, it soon adds up. So I appreciate the fact that that's been taken into account and a little bit's come off it. So that's great. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you. I want to echo what everybody else has said. But at the I know. But and thank you very much, because this is a good news item at the end of the day. It's a positive thing for the community. It's a positive thing for businesses. Because like Councillor Linthwaite said, there's £75 less that somebody's got to pay to park the car when they come to work in Matlock. And that's a very positive thing. Echoing I don't know if it was Councillor G or Councillor Nash who mentioned it, about ensuring that we say that there's going to be a ceiling on the number of permits, because I think people really do need to take advantage of the permit, because they are saving a heck of a lot of money. And I just wonder how many people do know that. And that is a positive for business. Even though we only got 46 consultations, it's a positive for business. And also, the one thing that I've always been very keen to get is that free half an hour. Because so many people pop down that hill, and it's so unjust to charge them £1.50 just to nip into the post office or just to nip into somewhere else. And I think that's doing good for our communities. So thank you very much, and hopefully it'll get approved. Well, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Lees.
Just going back on that one, is the annual charge, is it charged as one lump sum, or is it quarterly or 6 monthly, or would it help if it was quarterly for these people that's shelling out all that money to be quarterly?
Yes, so it's purchased through the pay by phone system, so you can pay it monthly.
Monthly?
Yeah, you can get it. So it works out £40 a month. Yeah.
Right, no more contributions. I'll just make my... Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Just a brief correction, Chair. Darley Dale, the car park at the Whitworth, belongs to the Whitworth. It's part of the Whitworth Trust. It's nothing to do with the district.
Signage.
No, that's for the toilets, because the toilets have been closed down in Darley Dale and sold for...
But there is a car park there, of course, but it's a private car park. So,
it's a private car park. They have their own machines, their own scale of fees. But it's for the use of the Whitworth Trust's toilets.
That's right.
That's the fee for, not parking.
Right. I just to echo other members' thanks to Ash and Vicky and the team for all the hard work they've done over several years now to come up with these proposals. I'd just like to make one comment. Those of us who've been Matlock councillors for many years have always advocated variable charges in our car parks. Obviously, the town centre ones in all cases probably are the ones that we want to, in a way, not discourage people from using, but encouraging, on the other hand, more use of the out-of-town car parks. So even the Matlock Station car park I always saw as probably taught, or it could have been divided, I suppose, at the far end near where the travellers are, where the travellers might not be in the future, hopefully, could have been cheaper. But the other one is Artist's Corner, which I've always regarded as more of a Matlock car park than a Matlock Bath car park, even though it's because it's closer to Matlock town centre than it is to Matlock Bath. So I did discuss this with Vicky briefly, and apparently the evidence doesn't show that people don't use that car park during the week. as much as I suspected they didn't, because every time I drive past there during the day, it seems to be fairly vacant. So I think that this, if we're going to review the charges in the future, I think that's one subject that can be reviewed, because if we want to encourage people to use out-of-town car parks in the five main towns, then I think that's one example of where charges could be reduced there to encourage them to do that before they clog up the town centre trying to find a space in another car park, for instance, the Old English Road one, which is not easy to access or to get, certainly not to get out of. It's okay to get in, but not to get out. So I think that's something that can be reviewed in the future. Right, I think that's it then. So we come forward to a vote. We've had it proposed and seconded. So all those in favour of the recommendations? I think that's unanimous. Nobody against, no abstentions. That's very good, thank you. Members, the next item 5 on the agenda is review of the provision of public toilets, pages 157 to 190. So, who's going to? Oh, Councillor Slack. Oh, you will, right, okay, Councillor Slack, yeah, okay, right. Thanks for coming, all the best, yeah, right. Right. Who's going to present this report then?
That would be me, Chair.
Yeah, right, okay.
If it's all right with members, I don't intend to go into the report in too much detail. We had a briefing on the 9th of January this year. There's been a series of conversations that I've had with a few members around this table regarding the report and the recommendations that the working group has put forward. There are 16 recommendations. There are some one-off costs. There are some ongoing costs to try and help make it clear where they sit. There's a table in 2.50 that outline what money would be spent where and whether it's a one-off cost or an ongoing cost. Other than that, Chair, I'm happy to move to questions.
Okay, thank you, Ash. So what questions do we have about this report and the, how many is it, 15 recommendations, 16 recommendations, yeah, right, okay. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a tiny one. Recommendation 12, it refers to 2.40. Is that actually 2.46 to 2.49?
It is, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously the item 7, the Ashbourne on the recreation ground is on this, and 5,000 contribution from Ashbourne Town Council. But the question is, why should we be taking money off Ashbourne Town Council when we're giving others money to do these things?
Yes, Chair, if I can. We're not necessarily taking it from the Town Council. To be clear, it's an offer that has come forward through discussions, which I believe Councillor Dobbs has been involved in some of those discussions. It is an offer. The toilet block on the recreation ground would be a new facility. The Ashbourne Town Council and the Friends of Ashbourne Park were keen to see a toilet reintroduced in that area, and this is their way of showing support for it.
Can I come back, Chair? Yeah, thanks for that. Well, yeah, it's I welcome the toilets coming back anywhere, but I just wondered, you know, is Ashbourne, should it need it, would it still get a contribution after this 12 months when this has gone?
I think that'll be open for discussion, Councillor Lees. The offer was for a maximum of £5,000 initially, and then for a discussion thereafter. So I'm happy to report back to members after 12 months, should we approve the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just continuing on from the Ashbourne recreation toilets. Obviously, in your report as regards one that Ashbourne Town Council are putting this money in, plus the fact that we're looking into building onto it. would it not be financially better off returning them to being the toilets that they were without having the clean and green team based there?
It's not necessarily a financial issue, it's logistics. That is used as an area, as a mess room. It's also used for some storage for the clean and green team that are operating in the park. So there are operational reasons why we would like to retain that. We had that discussion as part of the working group. There was a site visit to the facility. Sam led that. Sam has spoken to the team. We have discussed it at great length. And for operational reasons rather than financial reasons, we think this is the best offer.
Thank you, Chair. Everybody's seen the representation from Birchover Parish Council, from the Parish Council Chair. And, you know, for a small village, they definitely punch above their weight. And you can see, you know, they're a little bit dischuffed with how they feel they've been treated. I've also had some correspondence from a lady about Matlock bus station and toilet provision. So there are other places out there that feel that they're not being treated as a level playing field. The Conservatives aren't actually part of the toilet working group, and I must pay tribute to Councillor G, who put the motion forward for Monsell Head toilets to be reopened. But will you be looking again at should these be passed tonight? Will you be looking again at toilet provision elsewhere?
The remit of the review was not necessarily that. It was to look at toilet provision as in increasing provision and access to public toilets. And that is what I think the working group have done. With regard to Birchover, I'm not aware of any representation for additional support other than what we've got in front of us this evening. So there are some public toilets that are operated by community groups that are doing that and doing it very well and within their levels of affordability. We do appreciate as a working group, and I try to acknowledge that in the report, that we do know that it can be not just financially challenging but time consuming for community run toilets, which is why we've made the suggestions in here to enable us to provide a support package depending on what the scenario is. And the reason we haven't put a blanket package in as such is because we do have some arrangements where we provide stocks, either purchasing or purchase to get the economies of scale, or we support in other ways. So I think it's understanding each one on its own merit as to what we can do. But we haven't approached just every community toilet, because there's a balance between making sure that we've got provision but an affordable approach to this, knowing that we have increased provision, we have increased accessibility, and that has come at a cost, as we've outlined in here. So it's managing those costs. But if other community-run toilets wish to come forward to have a discussion, I think we're open to that. We've given ourselves a small amount of money to do that. Interestingly, since the report has been published, I've now received 2 requests for discussion. But I think we go through the process of having those discussions.
Yeah, I'm reassured by that, because I think there's a little bit of frustration comes through. They feel they can't recollect their parish council being consulted by the working group. So thank you for that response. The other question is about the ongoing charges. You've put these charges down for works and whatever, bearing in mind the budget coming up and things like that, with ongoing charges, particularly if there are other changes. Is Karen happy with this input from the budget to these? Thank you.
Well, I don't necessarily want to answer on Karen's behalf, but as a member of the corporate leadership team, Karen is aware of these. Karen's made her comment in here. It was a brief that was given to the leadership team from the Progressive Alliance. We've costed that the best we can based on the costs that we've got elsewhere, and in terms of design and build costs, they're quoted for. But I do accept that there will be some other costs that may come up, depending on certain maintenance or repair that happen to facilities. But we have that for all of our assets. So we do regular condition surveys on the facilities. So we try to get our projections as close as possible. But there are always those unforeseen. But that's why we have certain budgets to cover for those. But it might be that, in time, members may wish to review it again. It was only, 7 years ago since the last review of the toilets, where we had quite a large rationalisation of the service that took place. And it's not to say that wouldn't happen again in future. We're open to that. What we're presenting to you tonight is the brief that was given to the working group, and I feel that we've delivered on that.
Yes, can I just add to that? It is important to realise that quite a few toilets were closed down in the past. And the working party or the working group wanted to find ways of reopening some of them, if possible. And just to answer Councillor Hobson's point about the toilets, the former toilets at the back of the market hall in Matlock, or former market hall in Matlock, several Matlock members got the same correspondence, email trail between Giles Dan and Mike Goldsworthy and so on that, answering Chrissy Grocott, who sent the email in. And we were told that we had a discussion as ward members with those officers on Friday morning about the scheme in itself. But it was also, I think someone asked a question about that because they'd seen the same correspondence. But it's going to be obviously, at great cost, the toilets there could be reopened, but they're not actually there. They've been taken out, so it's an empty space. And it's right at the back of the bus station area, close to M&S's loading and unloading area. When it was open as a toilet, it was constantly being vandalised. I think the cost to the council was quite considerable. It was an unpleasant place it was abused as well, the vandalism and abuse. And particularly women didn't like to use it at any time of day, never mind at night, as it was very unfriendly and unwelcoming. So that's why the decision was taken to close that facility. So I think officers and even members are reluctant to put in hand funds to consider reopening them at this stage. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that, Chair. That's helpful. This is another question entirely. Obviously, in those circumstances, do the working group, do we ever look at, standalone toilets you see when you're abroad where people pay a higher fee but they're totally enclosed? Have you looked at doing that at other places?
It's a good question. Well, we had a similar discussion, not exactly that, but members will probably recall we had a temporary toilet block at Artist Corner. So we've developed almost like a plug-in and play toilet. So it's a self-contained unit that has toilets, sinks, has electricity and running water. We did some work on the groundworks, which were relatively inexpensive. And initially, the working group had come to the conclusion that we would have that on a seasonal basis. What we found was we get closer to the winter months, or colder winter months, and especially given its position near the river, it experienced frost. So when we had the opportunity to have the conversion of the former toilet block, which had previously been used for a local business, we opted for that, but we've retained the temporary toilet. So what we do have is an opportunity to plug in and play elsewhere. So whether that's for an event or we feel that somewhere needs an additional toilet, then we've got that opportunity that we can use. So that's kind of the basis of those discussions rather than individual toilets.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a partial question which might lead to a proposal. And can I do that now, or do I have to wait into discussion? Okay. I welcome the reopening of toilets. That's absolutely brilliant. But I'm concerned about the parish councils in the north of the area that took on the toilets six or 7 years ago with a small subsidy at the time and have been struggling on to keep them open ever since. Many of them have kept them open all year round. And I'd like to build in here some kind of subsidy just for the next couple of years, because they've had the large increase in cost of living, cleaning, electricity, so that they are supported. So can't cover all their costs. In Bradwell, which is probably one of the larger villages, our cost is £7,000 a year. But if we were to give a fraction of that, say a couple of thousand, that would really help. And £7,000 for a parish of our size is a substantial chunk of the precept. It's not like you can just put the precept to cover these things.
Good point, Councillor. Can Ash or Samantha answer that?
I'll start with the first part of the response, if I can, Chair, please, because it's not really a decision for officers, this. This is a member decision. If you wish for a greater contribution to be issued to that's noted in the report, then that needs to come from the floor rather than from officers. From an officer perspective, that goes back to that affordability point. In terms of managing that, of course we could do that, but it does need to be a member decision because you're spending additional funds.
As that issue is quite widespread throughout the district, is it something that the Toilets Working Group could consider? Because obviously some of them be considered already, but mainly when you've had representations from parish councils or, for instance, Matlock Town Council reopen the children's toilets in All Park at considerable cost. And I think the maintenance of those is quite significant as well. So there are quite a few up and down the district where parish councils are putting quite a few resources into toilets and keeping them open. So it's probably something that, whether it needs to be a formal resolution, I don't know, but it's something that I think I would support Councillor Nash's request to have it looked at least by the Toilets Working Party, if that's possible.
We could. The only thing I would say to members, Chair, just to be mindful of, is there's no budget allocation beyond what is noted in this report. So if you are looking to provide, say, £2,000 per facility, we're looking around £16,000 additional each year. So if you wanted to move that, you would need to make that type of budget available.
I'd like to include it in this report if we can, because it will get reviewed on the council meeting on the 3rd of March, and if we can't find the money, it can be stopped there.
Can I have anyone willing to second that amongst the membership, or how other members would like that to be dealt with, whether it's something that they agree with Councillor Nash about, and how soon they'd like it to be considered, perhaps? Councillor G.
Well, obviously, there are quite a lot of toilets. What I don't want is I do understand the ongoing costs, but on the other hand, I don't want it to be thrown into the long grass and forgotten. I mean, I think at that working group meeting, there's Hathersage as well, Your Grave, there's probably ones that we don't know about. And you can see by, the response, people, they feel very unhappy.
Actually, are we still in questions or are we in debate? Because obviously this is sort of almost encouraged a debate about something completely different. Because I wanted to say something more in debate, really, than ask her.
If there are no more questions, you've got a question? Right, two questions then. Councillor Lees and Councillor Ball.
Yeah,
We'll go to debate.
mine was answered by Ash, basically, about the... obviously, with reopening the Artist Corner toilets and having the block spare, could that be used a lot more efficiently by moving it round, like, say, Matlock Bath, for instance, where there's a lot of work to be done in the interim, rather than just sat there doing nothing. It's, to make sense to be getting some use out of it.
That's a good question. Ash?
That's absolutely the intention, Chair. Matlock Bath is an interesting one, as I've noted in the report here, because we did explore the opportunity to refurbish the toilets, but there's some structural challenges. They can be overcome, but the costs aren't insignificant. So we are looking at what we can do there. I've had a conversation quite recently with Councillor Whitehead, who is involved in local discussions around a former toilet block there. And I've assured him that we'll pick up those conversations depending on the outcome of here. And I think there is something that we can do there. What that is quite yet, I'm not sure, but there are a number of options on the table for us. So I'm almost certain that's something that we'll be bringing back in due course.
Thanks, Ash. Only reason I brought that up because it's one of the ones that's going to be the most costly, and it's something that's achievable. Well, I thought.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you just reiterate this business about some of the parish councils being left behind, who actually took the toilets on way back when they were closed rather than them being closed? You did mention at one point, and I'm not sure whether I can see it in here, I know I've jotted something down, about the actual parish councils being able to get funds by doing it, putting it in their precepts. Is that right? Can they actually, cost effect to the fact of saying each year it takes so much to run that particular toilet or toilets? Can they put that in the precept?
Chair, I think that's entirely in the gift of parish councils. They will know themselves how much the toilet blocks cost to operate, and if they want to increase a precept, that's up to them to do that. We have invited in a community group that had taken on the toilets, which included former councillors Wakeman, Gamble and Boothroyd, and more recently Councillor G. So we do understand that the challenges that they've got. And as I say, it's not always financial. Sometimes it's down to time constraints. So we can try and support where we can, but I would just stress to members there needs to be an affordability issue here.
Yes, my first question was exactly the same thing. Can they account for these costs in their precepts? My second question is stemming from my understanding of Birchover Parish Council's comparison with two cafes, if you like, getting £2,000. I think the difference is the Whitworth Trust hasn't got a precept they can ask for money for. And also the access to those toilets is going to be through a cafe, so it's going to affect the business running of that cafe, having loads of people walking through it. And again, the Pavilion Cafe, it's a business that's trying to pay staff, and they're going to have members of the public. It's always a very busy cafe during the summer months, barging the way through, and are they going to be losing business because members of the public are trying to access their toilets? So I don't think it's a realistic expectation that the old toilets blocks can be compared with access to toilets through cafes in buildings which cannot put up their presets to get extra money. You see what I mean?
Yes, that's very true, actually. And thinking about Bakewell Road in Matlock, the toilets that were provided by previous owners of M&S store are being closed by M&S, so they're not any longer available, of course. And that is a risk, I guess, with grant aiding or giving a subsidy to private businesses to open their toilets to the general public. If they find it's a problem, then we could end up with a bit more being closed because they don't want to carry on with that sort of concession. Councillor Wayne.
I could understand what Councillor Nash is saying about the parish councils. I totally understand that. But I think just to go and give, I couldn't support a motion that says we're going to give X amount of £1,000 to a number of organisations without it being properly costed, without a thorough investigation of footfall, and use of those premises. I think it is important that we do look at the provision in the more rural areas, but I think we've got, some foundations here, some good recommendations, and I think we move on to the next thing, in relation to other areas after them properly costed, if that's okay. I know that was a state. I'm going to ask you a question because we're in question. But basically, have you got access to all the costings for all these other? No.
No, we've not, Councillor Wayne. It would be down to those parish councils to provide us some information there. I mean, if the workings that Sam has pulled together are based on a flat contribution to those parish councils that have taken on public toilets. So I don't know whether they monitor footfall. I don't know how they manage their costs or what their costs are, so we would be heavily reliant on them being open and transparent with us on that front.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman and then Councillor Linthwaite.
Yeah, I mean, the point behind the precept would be that you're going to take the cost of what you want for that, running that toilet, and putting it on the heads of the people in your parish. It's not coming from a general fund. It's an extra cost for just the people there. So, maybe they don't want to support toilets for visitors or anything like that. So it'd be a bit unfair to just bang everything onto a precept.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. Working groups come and go, I realise. Will this one continue? Because if so, perhaps that's something the working group could look at as part of their next priority.
Bluntly, Chair, I didn't anticipate it would continue after this evening, but it doesn't sound like that might be the case. But we'll be guided by members on that.
Yes, toilets are always an issue with the public, aren't they? So it's something that probably needs to be considered by the council full stop in the future. And if we need to reintroduce meetings of the working group, then so be it. We can do that, I suspect, without too much trouble. Right, if there are no more questions then, can we move on to debate and look at all these 16 recommendations? If someone would like to propose that we accept these recommendations and second it as well. And Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Well, again, for efficiency, I think we can take all 16 together, and I propose that we do just that. And I'd like to comment that thank Ash and the working group for what they did. This is very much a first step. I mean, it was faced with the significant reduction in public toilet provision post 2017, 2018, and trying to bring it back. Obviously, in some cases we couldn't. They've been demolished. In some cases they stood and could have a future. In some cases that baton had been taken up by the local community, and well done them. And I think that this is a good balanced set of proposals which, if the working group proceed, could actually perhaps be further expanded who knows. But I think there is, the door is left open, isn't it, to community toilets in what is being provided in recommendation 12. And if funds run out, then funds run out and it can be reviewed. But we don't know at this stage. I recommend this as a good first step. Thank you, Chair.
I'm happy to second the proposals, and an excellent report. A lot of work's gone in, thought has gone in, and I can't see that the working group will be closed at this point. I think there's still items left to discuss around community operated schemes. Happy to second it as it stands.
Just to, if you look at recommendation 13, for instance, I mean, Ash has pointed out how costly some of these schemes are, but 31 with the on cost, £31,500 to employ a full-time public conveniences attendant. And of course, the more toilets that we reopen, whatever, the more those costs are going to escalate, I guess, and there may be a need for a second, or certainly a part-time public convenience attendant. So it's another thing to bear in mind. It's one of the major costs in that report, in fact. Any further contributions? Yes, Councillor Nash. Right, I anticipated that.
You didn't expect me to be quiet. I've heard the conversation going on. I'd rather we did finish the working group today and it didn't carry on. It takes up a lot of officer time, and we'll soon eat away the amount of money I'm suggesting we give to parish councils by the work in just around here. I understand Steve's argument about the footfall, but to be fair, that's largely irrelevant. Most of these toilets are provided for visitors. They're not provided for the people that live in those villages. And it is an amenity. I mean, I can see our public toilets from our house. And the amount of times I see the van drivers pull up outside, pop in, the amount of people that come and use the playground beside it and then use the toilets, they're a necessity. If they're not there, where are those people going to go? We don't want more bottles of pee in the side of the road because people have got nowhere to go. I think parish councils will struggle on. They'll keep them going, don't get me wrong. But We pushed as a council a large cost onto them 6 years ago. We expected to save £212,000, and I'm suggesting we give a small fraction of that back and for a limited period of time. So I propose that we do add it on as an addition to this proposal. If we can't fund it, we have the opportunity on the 3rd of March to stop it when it goes up for the full budget review. Quite honestly, if we can't find £16,000, we're probably not doing our jobs properly.
Is anybody prepared to second that proposal? Councillor Linthwaite. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, you know, particularly at the current moment, we all have concerns over the finances and how we might work this. But I think Councillor Nash makes a very powerful argument in terms of that at the moment, small parish councils are bearing a burden which was previously borne by this council and was ejected for whatever reason. So I think it's worth looking at. I would support it on that basis. Yeah.
I think, yes, I have sympathy with Councillor Nash because when I was at work, I used to have a list in my mind of all the public toilets around the Peak District, and that was one of my favourites, you might say, or most frequent used ones. So it is quite important, I think, and as has been pointed out, these public toilets are mainly for either visitors or passers through. And as Councillor Nash said, he sees from his house van drivers pull up quite frequently near those toilets. So, yes, it is quite important. But anyway, I think Councillor Lees wants to join.
Yeah, can I just ask, or just make sure that the 31,500, which was for a staff member, and Sam said that the vehicle was, we'd got a vehicle that was we could use for that staff member. What's the lifespan of that vehicle? Is it just a 12-month lifespan, or do you think we've got something that can keep that position on the road?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it'll have a 6-year lifespan.
Councillor G, then Councillor Hobson.
I'd just like to say that this report it's quite what I'd call overly generous in some respects. And I feel I'm slightly complicit because I did bring that motion in 2023, but it was a specific case in a place where I didn't feel that those toilets at Monsled were connected directly to a community because it is entirely visitors at Monsled, so it wasn't designed to be a special case. It wasn't designed to produce, an influx of, if they can have it, we want it, because, that's what we're going to end up with. And I think Councillor Bull was, that question that she asked about precepts, of course, parishes can, if they feel really connected to their public toilets, they can put it into their precepts. And if they feel that their community supports to pay for it, they can put the precept up to pay for it. So I think it's better if these public toilets are community projects or supported by precepts, because the council, it's at its limit here. And I think you've done a good job in this, but I think some of it is bordering on overly generous. And can this council afford to go any further? And I would probably say no. I think, I know it's difficult with public toilets, but you have to remember that most of the people in a village where there's public toilets never use them. So do those people actually want to pay for them in the precept? So sometimes it's slightly overblown, but if you have a lot of visitors, then it is a responsibility of the district council, because that's part of our, it is good, isn't it, to have a toilet? So, so we need to be careful. And, from the guidance I'm getting from officers, it sounds like they feel that they want this to be a closed book for now. If it's 7 years since we've had a review, I'd support this at this level, and I will be voting for it at the end, but whether you want to continue and start to open the book even more, I would suggest you want to be careful about that.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit on the fence here because I can't understand why toilets are not statutory provision.
And, you know, when the toilets were closed before, nobody wanted to close the toilets, but we were told there is no money for toilets. And obviously Ashley's looking very worried now when we're saying we're going to think about doing this. But nobody wants to live in a village where there aren't toilets, and you graphically describe what happens when there aren't toilets. I know going through Baslow, where we've got toilets, they're massively used. You know, it's a major A road going through, as well as all the tourists. And I just want to say as well, thank you to the people that come and clean those toilets, because that is a job and a half. And sometimes, you know, well, I don't need to go into it, but, you know, thank you for what they've done. From my point of view, I think we are, you know, I think it would be irresponsible of us to say tonight, X thousand will do this. But I think the spirit of this group is that it shouldn't be thrown into the long grass, and we look at it really, you know, promptly.
To say that out loud.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not trying to sway members either way. All I would ask from an officer point of view is if members are minded to look to give a contribution, can you be very clear what that criteria is, please?
Come back, Councillor Nash.
Can I answer that? Because hopefully this is clear. It's the toilets that were given to parish councils in the 2018 shutdown process.
Any comments from
It's either 6 or 8.
Ashley or Samantha on that particular point?
No, Chair. I think that's for members to determine. We'll make it happen if members want you to do that. But I think from our point of view, it needs to be really clear, because there are quite a variety of the way that they're operated, whether they're in former council buildings or whether they're in current council buildings, whether they're on a lease, what kind of expenditure that we think is reasonable. I think we just need to be very clear what it is, and then we can work out what that looks like in terms of affordability.
I would restrict it to the ones where it's been solely handed over to the councils, so they're bearing all the costs, not shared costs with the district council. And while I said 2018, I think that does exclude Hathersage and Tideswell, which is probably worth including in the list.
Yes, that's true. There are other parishes as well, aren't there, that have taken them over previously, and some have paid made quite a lot of investment to improve those toilets, or even rebuild them in some cases. So yes, that's quite important. Any further contributions? I mean, we've got to obviously decide whether we're going to vote on this particular motion if there are enough people to support it, or to bring it back to some other further review by the working group. So any suggestions from any other members before we vote on this?
Are we talking to the amendment, as it were?
Yes, I think that's it, really. Yes, if it is an amendment, yes,
right.
That's right.
Because I'm always slightly unhappy, is that the right word? Not probably, when I'm asked to vote on something when I haven't got all the facts. And I clearly don't have all the facts here. It's a convincing start, but where does the piece of string end, if you see what I mean? And this could be a task for the working group that you thought had ended.
With a very specific remit, probably, you mean, don't you? I suspect, yes. Okay, yeah. Councillor Chapman, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think this is what Steve was getting at when he echoed it earlier on. The fact that it needs more work doing. It needs a review to work out. I mean, where's the 16,000 coming from? I mean, is that 8 public toilets? Well, there's more than 8, aren't there, in the Derbyshire Dales? So where do we stop? You know, it's not. I wouldn't vote for that amendment.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's making really sensible points, and I think the conflict is obvious, isn't it? Yeah. Would Councillor Nash be willing, some way that we could have this amendment to be looked at by the working group?
Yeah.
Quickly, within a time frame, rather than specifically here in terms of starting to dish out money that we don't really know who's going to get how much what.
I'd be happy if there was a very short time frame put on it.
Yeah, is that something we could do?
And would you, Councillor Nash, be willing to attend a meeting of the working group to explain your case, in effect?
I absolutely would.
Right, okay, okay.
And Chair, could I ask that the Conservative group be invited to join
Yeah, well, yeah, no. Yes, I don't know if, I've always favoured that personally, but I don't know about other colleagues in the Progressive Alliance. But anyway, I would tend to favour that. Yeah, I think it would be fair. Yeah, Councillor G.
Because what I'm hearing here is that toilets that have been taken, when you say given to the parishes were actually, or the communities were willing to take them on and operate them. And I presume these toilets, which we haven't got a list of, so we're not really furnished with all the information as I sit here, if they're actually being operated and they were happy to do it and they feel it's valuable, I mean, what we're leading down a road here is putting all that cost back onto this council. If that's what you're asking to discuss, isn't it? And I don't really think that's... I mean, my idea is that these toilets, if they can be self-sufficient in some way, like Councillor Hobson's mentioned the one at Baslow, which is mainly visitors, and that's self-sufficient because the council have a plan to put an extra on the car park. So that's a good idea, that's self-sufficiency. But, you know, a lot of this report is dishing out money to places like Darley Dale, £2,000 here, £3,000 there, £8,000 in Matlock Bath, and it all adds up. And before you know it, it runs out of control. So I really think that this report is good, and leave it.
I think Councillor Nash wants to come back finally to...
Just wanted to correct some of your impressions of the world. Parish councils were given the option to either take them over or they'd be closed. So I wouldn't say they did it willingly. They did it because it was in the interest of their community and of the visitors to the area. And I haven't suggested that we write a blank cheque here. I've been very precise about the number of places, which is less than 8, as clarified by Ash and Sam. So I'm not opening a big chequebook. There are other councils that might want to be considered, but actually they're semi-supported already. So it's only the councils that are left to their own devices.
Councillor Floggart.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that many, many years ago, Ashford in the Water took on their toilets from the District Council, and they have an honesty box, and that honesty box pays for all the cleaning products, toilet rolls. They share the cleaning between members of the parish council. They do get a slight pay, but not a lot. And those toilets are really successful. You know, and they've been going on for long before 2018, when they were all closed. They have been operating for a long time, self-sufficiently. Thank you.
Chair, can I suggest that I accept Councillor Linthwaite's suggestion and that we put it into because otherwise we'll be here all night debating it.
Yes, and from Councillor Dobbs's first observation as well, that we need to have full facts really before any decision is made, because as people have said, there are other toilets that have been taken over by different parish councils and over a number of years, in fact, not just since 2018. So shall we leave it at that, and where we ask Ash and Samantha if they can consider reopening or reconvening the working group and considering that particular option, not the whole gamut of the toilets throughout the district, but those particular toilets.
Thank you, Chair. If I've understood this correctly, then we are looking at facilities that were handed over as part of the last review, and that those who are operating the service are covering the entirety of the costs. Is that what members are asking for? Okay, because we probably can, if it helps, I don't want to extend the debate unnecessarily, but now that we've got that criteria, we could probably tell you how many toilets that affects. And I don't know if that will help speed up your decision-making process, or you would still like for the working group to meet again to go through it in further detail. I'm not trying to get out of that. We could give you some information if it helps. If I can just hand that over to Sam for a second, Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. So there are 6 parish councils operating public toilets that they took up from 2017. There are 2 prior to that review that are operating toilets. and there is one pending a purchase via release. So you've got 6 that moved from our responsibility to the parish council responsibility in their entirety from 2017. There are 2 that happened before 2017.
Ms. Councillor G.
Because I'm glad that Helen brought this up about Ashford, because is that one of those 6?
Ashford is, yeah. One
Because,
of those 6.
you know, I've attended every single Ashford Parish Council meeting since I was elected as a member of this council, and they've never mentioned any problems about their responsibility in running those toilets. They've never brought it to me as something where they want any additional help. They've just got on with the job. So, you know, well done to Helen for bringing that up, because it's just not a request to this council.
No, that's right. That's a consideration, I think, isn't it? If the request hasn't been made, then do we want to provide a response to it?
Can I add,
Chapman.
I think that you'll find Hartington are on that list as well, aren't they?
Sorry, say again.
You'll find Hartington on that list.
We clean and operate Hartington, so they're based from, they're ours, yeah. So sorry, so the 6 that I mentioned were part of the 2017-18 review that were taken up by parish councils. We have 9 ourselves that Clean and Green clean.
Would it be helpful just to give us that list so we can see what that list is?
Yeah.
There's only that.
Okay, yes. So Ashford in the Water, Birchover, Bradwell, Moniash. There's 2 at Wirksworth. It's Fanishaw and Barmetcroft. So that's the 6. And the other 2 that were handed over before 2017 are Tideswell and Hathersage.
Okay, then. Do you want to add any recommendations there to the 16 we've got already, or just you keep it informal and wait for some sort of further information from Ash and Samantha in terms of what evidence?
I think from there might only be 6 toilets, but we're dealing with, the public money here. And if something is working effectively, and I don't personally want, I'm supportive if there is a need to look at that. But I do think unfortunately, I do think a little bit more work needs to be done on to look at the justification and necessity of these things. And if it can be done in a short period of time, that's where I'd like to be, because I need to be satisfied that we've got possession of the full facts before any decision is made in relation to public money. Thank you.
So you prefer it not to be added to these recommendations then, just to do it informally in terms of what we've roughly agreed at this meeting?
It depends. It depends, Chair, what you're going to put down on there. If you're going to say each one of these has £2,000, no.
No, that's right.
So it's the wording. I like the idea. I mean, Councillor Nash rightly said by the 3rd of March, and I realise time is a ticking. But at the end of the day, do all these parish councils, need our help? If they've not come forward before, then how can that be justified to spend the money? So that's where I'm at with it. Cheers.
Councillor Linthwaite.
Sorry, another question. This is a question for Ash and Sam, really. Would this be an onerous task, bearing in mind your current workload?
There are a lot of priorities that we're working on at the moment, so it is something we would do because members have given us that objective to complete, but we've got a lot of other projects that are in train at the moment. To turn it round in time for March would mean that we would have to probably pause on some of the other work, but it could be done. It could be done. I think where I would like some more clarity is looking at the criteria that you gave in terms of it was handed over in a previous review, then there are 6. If you're looking at the other 2 that have been mentioned, that was prior to that review taking place. Are we ruling those out? And also, there is some provision in here in recommendation 15 that we have a budget of £5,000 to re-establish a community toilet scheme, which some of those parish councils could apply to. It might be, and I'm not trying to steer members in a particular decision, but rather than create an additional piece of work, do you want to increase that amount by a small amount? And as we've noted in the report, those parish councils then can come forward to the council via an application, and it will be considered by the working group on a kind of each individual case. But that's just a suggestion.
Chair, if parish councils can apply to the community scheme, then I'd be quite comfortable with increasing that and letting them apply as and when they need it, rather than keep this going on, not just tonight, but I don't want the working group to have to carry on. And Ash and Sam do have a lot on at the moment.
So would you want to propose an increase in that tonight then, or?
If we do it now, then it goes into the budget round and gets checked.
Councillor Chapman.
If we throw this open to all these councils, and we've heard that there are councils who are getting along without it, fine, thank you very much. And then somebody says, OK, you can apply here for £2,000, then what are they going to do? They're going to say, yeah, we'll take some of that, thank you. So, that's where a sort of closer look needs to be to get us to the right place. I would move that we take the recommendations as they stand in our report.
I'd agree with that as well, Chair, because I think we're just going to open up hornet's nest by other groups coming out the woodwork once this gets out in the domain, and there'll be toilets coming from every direction, I'm afraid. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but there's going to be other organisations that are going to need help as well. So I quite agree, leave it as we are for the time being. Get the working group on it tomorrow. And we go from there, but I think it's something that needs coming back to a different meeting to this one.
Personally, I tend to agree with that. I think we can debate it until midnight tonight if we wanted to, but we wouldn't necessarily make any further progress. So I think probably if it does come back to the working group fairly urgently, allowing for the workload that Samantha and Ash have got already on that subject. A time frame, would anyone like to suggest? It would have to be, wouldn't it? Yes, it's going to have to be within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Archer.
I don't really think that's reasonable on the office. I think we've got something on the table where there is an amount of money people can bid for. Why don't we just wait and see actually what happens to see whether that is a sufficient amount, and if not, that will be our research done for us by seeing if what we put in place is adequate, rather than giving the working group another load of work when they've actually already got plenty to do. Yeah. So I would suggest we go with what we've got and then see how that goes in terms of the fund that's there for people to bid into, and then maybe Ash and Sam can come back and report to us what the demand's been like for that and whether we feel we need to increase it retrospectively.
Yeah. Councillor Easy.
Yeah, sorry to keep coming back to you. This has gone on for, 7 years? Why are we now pushing for it to be done in 4 weeks? It needs time to be thought out properly.
It does really, that's right, yes. So you prefer not to have a definite time frame, in other words?
I don't think we should be on for this year's budget, because it's not going to happen. It's too much work to be done.
I think probably that's the case, yes. So do we follow Councillor Archer's suggestion then that we wait and see, basically, what demands there are on that particular budget in recommendation 15, the £5,000? Councillor G.
Could I just clarify? We've got a proposer and a seconder for this report that we're hopefully all going to vote for, because I haven't heard anybody against this report. We've done a good job, and then let's actually do his other jobs that he's been asked for, because there's about 25 of them. And I think we should just put a line under it tonight.
Yes, Councillor Bull.
I see what you're saying and what have you, but I do believe it was proposed to put an amendment, if I'm not mistaken, and it was seconded on top of the 16. Proposed and seconded over there for the 16, and so we are on the amendment. So the only way now Go to the vote of the amendment of whether you want anything adding on to it. We've had us talk, we've had us debate, go to a vote on the amendment. If we agree, we'll vote for it. If we don't, we won't. And then we go back to the substance if it comes to be the case.
I thought the amendment had been more or less sort of withdrawn in effect.
Well, that's what I was trying to catch you. I'm happy to withdraw that because I
You were
appreciate.
seconded though, weren't you?
Yes, I was just saying I appreciate everybody thinking about it and I've listened to it and I think you make some really valid points.
I think the important thing is that this issue has been raised by Councillor Nash and you as well, and officers are aware of it now, so they know what the views of the members are about it. So it can come up obviously in the future, but I think if we go along with the 16 recommendations, with that proviso, obviously 15 has got the budget anyway, so that we can wait, as Councillor Archer says, for officers to report back on what the demands might be on that particular fund.
That amendment's got to be removed off the table.
Well, it has, yes. Well, yes, the mover's got to do it. The seconder has, but
I did say I'd take it back if there was a working party looking at it.
okay. So, if nobody wants to contribute to the debate, can we have a vote on the recommendation 16 or recommendation of 16 particular things? There's quite a lot of the recommendations on there, so we've had it proposed and seconded anyway. So, all in favour? Quickly, yeah. That's pretty unanimous, I think. Can't see anyone who's abstained or voted against, perhaps. So, yes, well, thank you very much for that. I must thank Ash and Samantha for their time in dealing with these awkward questions tonight.
The rest of the story is growing. Get lawnmowers out.
Oh, dear.
I'm here, I'm on budget meeting.
No, this one on Thursday, this one, all this executive officer.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's group tomorrow night, isn't it?
Yeah. We'll discuss. Are you coming down or are you in dreaming? Teaming, whatever it is.
Dreaming, I'm coming. Dreaming.
What are you doing?
You're dreaming, the teaming.
Coming. Tomorrow night, are you coming or are you zooming?
I'll come.
Yeah, what time?
Dreaming, the teaming.
6, what room?
4:11.
Yeah, we've got a lock-in again.
But I'll go say you've
We're having a
wrapped
lock-in.
Checked. Because I thought it had been that new lad, I thought, better
We're having a
check.
lock-in.